Hey everybody, I'm out here today working on a south-facing slope. I didn't do much chainsaw work in this area at all. I did everything with hack and squirt. I hack and squirted about 3 weeks ago, you can see there. And most of these trees, the small stuff's all dead. I came back in today and just freshened up the bottom of these with a little more. I want to get them killed out quicker. And I've blown around all the base of all these trees and plants so we can do our first control burn in here. But I wanted to show you this farkleberry right here. This whole south-facing ridge is farkleberry. And that is by far the biggest farkleberry I've ever seen in my life. Lay my hand up here on this guy so you can see. This thing is huge. That is a huge native blueberry bush. It's important to me to get some sunlight up in here because we've got farkleberry all the way down this ridge. You can see another one right here. More right there. But then it transitions to farkleberry and low bush blueberry on this whole slope. So I'm getting a lot of these sweet gums and smaller hickories and even some of the oaks out because I want all these farkleberries and blueberries to strive. And then I'm leaving obviously like big giant red oaks. I got some Shumard oaks and white oaks, some white oaks through here, mostly red oaks. So I believe this environment in here would be what Adam Work considers a Mesic oak environment. I say that because you can see all the rocks in here in this soil, but it's still, and I know the duff needs to be cleaned up with the burn, but I got really good topsoil in here, but it's real well drained soil. So it's a pretty Mesic setting right now. Even though I've started hacking and squirting, you can see some of the sun starting to creep in there, but still over in here, it's still pretty much a shady Mesic environment. So I want to get the sunlight in on all these blueberries and get this duff cleaned up and burned out of here and see what we're dealing with. I may come in and open it up even more, and it'll be open more in a couple of weeks when all this hack and squirt takes effect. All right, you can see more of the stone and the soils here in this area. A lot of rock down through here, but still good topsoil throughout. So, for instance, this bottom down here that's full of blueberries, I want to open the canopy up in there, and I'm working on getting it there. I want to have that at least reduced by at least 60%. I'd like for that to be 40% canopy through this whole ridge across here, so all the farkleberry and blueberries can run, and then I'll get some pockets of native grasses and forbs and sedges and whatnot growing in these areas. It transitions to more of a dry oak Mesic environment, about 20 foot to 30, maybe 40 foot in elevation up on top of that hill up this way. I'm about half, 3/4 the way up this hill, or a small mountain that I'm standing on right now. And up there on that transition area, the soil transitions to very sandy and rocky. And not only sandy and rocky, but there's chestnut oaks growing up there, and I don't have any chestnut oaks down here. So that's still not the very top of this mountain. There's another ridge up above it. But that's where it starts transitioning from what would be considered a Mesic oak environment to a dry Mesic oak environment. All right, so this is a gorgeous white oak I've got down here. This would be the main oak species for these Mesic oak areas. Now, the area I was just in, and you can see I've taken pretty much every tree. I've hack and squirted every tree around this guy. I want that canopy to be able to fill in. Get a nice big full canopy on that guy, but this is really about the only white oak we have over here. This is about the elevation where we transfer from these big white oaks into more red oaks. So it's still a mesic oak environment. In fact, there's another big white oak right here. But most of what we have are these big red oaks starting in this area. And then as you go up in elevation from here, you see more and more red oaks, less white oaks, until you get up to the very top. And up at the very top, you get into the chestnut oaks. So that's where we're transitioning from this mesic oak environment over to a dry mesic oak environment. All right, I want to show y'all, this is a maple tree. And it is a giant of a maple tree. Now, the experts that are trying to restore Prarie, which I wanted them to mark trees for me that would be appropriate for me to get out of here if we were to restore this to a 40% canopy cover, which would be a 60% canopy reduction. I've got another big maple tree over there. These maples are great pollinators. They're a host for a bunch of moths and butterflies, and they're really quite important to the birds too. The birds use them all the time. Yes, they do cast a heavy amount of shade out here behind it. I've probably got about a half of an acre of shade because of these 2 or 3 maple trees in here. But what I'm going to try to do is leave this a bit more mesic, if you will. Let it be a little more damp, a little more shady, and a little more wet, and maybe have a little bit more duff layer in this area. I think there's like 80 types of woodland salamanders that reside in northwest Georgia, and if we remove all of this duff layer and we give them no shade, those woodland salamanders can't survive here. They need to have these mesic areas that they can get shade and have brush and logs and leaves and duff to live in, and then from there they can transition out into sunning areas back in here, where we're going to open that canopy up a lot more in these big pines and big oaks and blueberries and whatnot. So when we manage our own property on a small scale, it enables us to keep some of these trees that on a larger scale you might just have to take them out because it's too hard to manage, you know, everything differently. But you can see here I've got a big beech tree here too. It was marked to be taken out, but I'm going to leave this little area with this big white oak in the middle, this big beech tree here, big maple back on this side, and then some more maples up towards the top of the hill. This will create a pocket in here of mesic habitat. So my goal is to have open woodland throughout, maybe open up to a prairie type status with more open canopy around all the blueberries and rocky soil areas. But the other areas where these white oaks are, I may leave them a little bit more mesic. Maybe I'll look at having a 60% canopy cover with 40% sunlight. So I want to create diversity and pockets as you move through this stuff. We'll have different habitats as you go along this south-facing slope. I am excited to get some fire through here, though. It's been too long and it's time. Okay, I would say that this area up here would be what is referred to as a dry mesic oak environment. It's just sand and gravel on a majority of this. Now, we do still have farkleberry in here. We still have low bush blueberry growing in here, but in addition, once I get up here at about 900 foot of elevation, is we have a lot of Grancy graybeards up here. I've got probably 10 or 12 up on this ridge, but there's not much for white oaks. There is some red oaks, different varieties of red oaks, but the main thing that's up here is chestnut oaks. You can see these big chestnut oaks growing everywhere. So This area up here would be chestnut oak dominant. We do have topsoil in here, but there's a lot of rock, a lot more sandy soils, so I wouldn't say that this is a 100% Xeric habitat, because you can still go up in elevation a good bit from here. I'm not on the highest ridge around by any means, but I would say this is a transition area. This would be a transition area from a Mesic oak environment with a little more moisture to a dry Mesic oak environment. And so yeah, it's just kind of a higher elevation, but not all the way to the top where it'd be a truly Xeric. And I'm really trying to open up this canopy to let these chestnut oaks fill in. All right, this is just interesting here. So that, my friends, is a true American chestnut. It's been here for the last 7 years. You can see though this dead one next to it, and dead one next to that. So there's an old chestnut stump, American chestnut stump right there. And the blight that is carried in all of these chestnut oaks and white oaks and red oaks, that blight top kills these chestnuts, and that's why they are endangered. But what's interesting is the blight does not kill the root and the stump system. So year after year, this stump will keep pushing up American chestnut saplings. They'll get about this tall, maybe a hair taller, and the blight will get it and it'll die off. But it's been doing that for at least 50 to 100 years now, because we lost, I think the blight was 50 years ago, maybe 75. At any rate, it has been certified as a true American chestnut. I sent the samples in to the American Chestnut Foundation, and these areas used to be areas, instead of chestnut oaks, I think 25% of the Appalachian trees 100 years ago were American chestnut trees. And they would actually take horses and wagons, and it would be community events where they would come up here on top of the mountain. They would harvest wagons and wagons fulls of American chestnuts. So as the American chestnuts died to the blight, what took their place for the most part in my area are these chestnut oaks right here. Yeah, so I miss the American chestnut tree. I'm wondering, once I get some fire in here and a little more sunlight, if this guy will get a little bit bigger before he dies.